Let's go.
Get your copy of Fire. It's definitely a must-read. If you enjoy hood books, this one is it. Just like the title of the book, it's officially Fire. Get it on Amazon, paperback or Kindle.
Always trust everyone to be themselves, but trust in the fact that you can see them well. I mean, so it's like, trust. It takes too much energy to not trust someone. I mean, it takes too much energy. You always gotta stay 2 steps ahead of them, whatever. Right. But trust them to be them.
Right. To be themselves.
Trust the snake to bite you. Right. Trust the lion to laugh. Trust the thief to steal from you. Like, trust them to be them. Too. But know them when you see them.
Peace. This is the enemy's public, and I am Bro.Nasir. This evening, we have order out of chaos. Order ab chaos. Order out of chaos. I'm all over the place today with the information. I'm going to dive in to different topics throughout the stream, sounding country now, throughout the stream, from the privatization of prisons to the Diddy situation, the politics, and the disrespect that we allow ourselves to engage in towards each other because of the politics. We're allowing the politicians to sit back and laugh while we go at each other over them, which makes no sense. Greetings to my sister, the true daughter of darkness. Thanks for tapping in, sis. Peace to my brother, Relentless. Thanks for tapping in. We allow these demons to have us going after each other because of them. And they sit back and laugh while we go at each other. We cuss each other out. We call each other out our names over a politician. And we have to ponder and think about what's going on while we're disrespecting each other. That situation that happened with Janet Jackson and D.L. Hughley, she didn't even come for him. And because she questioned someone who all of a sudden conveniently became one of us when she needed something from us, then she pandered towards us. And the way she pandered towards our people is so stereotypical. Thinking she can relate to us by doing and saying the dumbest shit that's stereotypical in our community, like saying she like a certain hip hop artist, or singing a certain song, or dressing a certain way, or saying that she eat a certain food. Just pandering, just shameless pandering towards our people. And basically what I've been saying ever since I heard of a Kamala Harris running for an office, the Sister Act. It's crazy how the sisters and the ones who raised the money for her It's a part of her sorority, the HBCUs. Her class of people raised that money for her because the inner city sisters not checking for her because they see the phoniness in her, so they're not checking for no Kamala Harris. But her class of people, the HBCUs, is the one who raised that money for her to get the nominee. Peace to my brother Warfare K, my Jersey brethren. Thanks for tapping in. We have to understand that there's nothing wrong with a sister having power and empowering herself, but we can't say because this woman looks like us, or even just say for sake of argument that it is what we'll call a foundational Black American or a sister. Just say for the sake of argument, that's what she is. Yet she don't have our best interests at heart. That would mean that she's the wrong Black woman. Just because she's a Black woman, that doesn't make her the right Black woman to stand and represent us if she's not going to stand and act on our behalf. And it's the same with, a brother. And I say brother with quotes. If he's not standing and acting on our behalf or have our best interests at heart, that's the wrong brother to be out trying to, or us trying to empower, because we're going to empower him against us. And we need to consider that. Someone coming to tell you that you should vote anyway and giving you the illusion of a choice, or they put two things that's not of your best interest before you and tell you that you must choose between the two things that they put before you. You tell them to go to hell, because if somebody puts some nasty food in front of me and some even nastier food and telling me I gotta choose one, I don't choose none because I don't like neither. So that's how if we don't see anybody that we could vote our confidence in, we don't vote. Me, I don't think I'll ever vote in an election because I vote my conscience, and I haven't seen in all of my adult life, as far as the high offices are concerned, I would, I never voted for anyone. Yeah, I'm going to touch on that Candace Owens so-called exposing Kamala Harris's genealogy. I heard she put a bounty out on her mother's genealogy. She offered $1,000 if anybody can find some information on her family's genealogy. I don't trust her either. I don't like when we try to tell some of our people or someone who look like us, we try to tell them that these other people would use them to their detriment. And they try to deny the fact that these people will do that. And they try to deny that racism does exist. Yet when they get their wake-up call, when they get fired from their job for whatever reason, the moment she spoke out of code with those people she was working for, they got rid of her, and she got a wake-up call, so she want to try to wiggle her way and come back to us and expect us to welcome her with open arms. Once you show me who you are, I'm going to believe that's who you are. And I'm really, if I trust you, if you gain trust from me, that's what it's going to have to be. You're going to have to prove yourself trustworthy. And I don't think she's done that as far as proving herself trustworthy as far as our people. You know, she defending Janet Jackson because of what D.L. Hughley said about her. I mean, it was distasteful, and it was an interview that had nothing to do with him. She didn't come for him. She said nothing about him. And it was really, really distasteful to do it during the sister's grieving. You know, she just lost her brother, her older brother, and she was doing interviews and they asked her about, sometimes they bait our people into asking certain questions. They bait us into those questions. The interview can be going okay, but then they ask a question that have nothing to do with us, or they ask a political question. They ask a question about Kamala Harris, and they would actually try to get you to answer the question or try to get you to come to sway your answer. And she just said what she heard, and people, they didn't take it out of context. She said what she heard, and they just did what they do. It wasn't taken out of context. The sister said what she heard about Kamala Harris, and everybody just piled on her, including D.L. Hughley, a comedian. I feel insulted when entertainers even think that they could influence us in any manner. They think that they could come and tell us something, and because they're on television or they're on the radio and they're famous, that they have some type of prestige and they have some type of leverage or some type of influence on us, that they can tell us something that we would do it. And they get frustrated when they lose that clout. They get frustrated when they lose that clout. But I'm going to play some. I'm going to be all over the place. Like I said, I'm going to deal with the privatization of prisons. I'm going to touch on the Diddy thing, the Kamala Harris thing, the Janet Jackson thing. I'm going to do order out of chaos because the order is chaos today. That's what the order is. It's chaos, outright chaos. So I'm going to share my screen and start with the privatization of prisons. Play the video and give my narrative.
The privatization of prisons and detention centers has been a source of debate for over 3 decades.
There has to be some things in our society that we agree are not a business opportunity.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with profiting off of anything. The question is, are you providing a service with good quality, with humane conditions, and so on?
The moral imperative of government should be to deliver the best outcomes.
The U.S. privatized parts of its state and federal corrections and detention facilities in the 1980s. 2 companies in particular, CoreCivic and Geo Group, have dominated the industry. But the uncertainty of a highly polarized industry stems mainly from the political climate. At the end of President Obama's second term, then Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates announced that the administration would phase out private prisons.
See, their sentiments, the wicked beings' sentiment is you can profit off anything, including the prison industrial complex. When you use the word industrial, it's synonymous to industry, meaning you are seeking to make a profit, and that's why you're in the business, and that's to make a profit. So the prison industrial complex is all about profit. They'll call it corrections, the Department of Corrections, but they don't want to correct no one's behavior, because if you correct someone's behavior, if you're in the business of correcting behavior, you are in the business of reform, and they're not in the business of reform, because if you reform a person or you reform persons, your business will get shut down. Prison is a business. Without occupants of that building, it's just an abandoned building. And everybody is under contract, from the officers to the nurse to the ones who make the, if you want to call it that, meals for the prisoners. So the prison industrial complex is privatized, and it's a literal business.
Prisons. Core Civic and Geo stocks plummeted. 2 months later, President Trump was elected and the stocks soared.
There has been political sensitivity in our stock. It's unfortunate, but our focus continues to be operations. That's what we can control. We can't control the political dynamic.
But lately, things have taken a deeper turn. Democratic candidates call for a total abolition. A number of states have or could be banning the industry. And Wall Street is divesting. On top of it all, prison populations are decreasing.
That's a huge indictment.
Despite all the noise in the market, companies have very good liquidity.
How a company is structured.
See, when you set up a code of laws that cause people to go to prison, for non-violent crimes and crimes that's a victimless crime, that means you just going for occupants in your building. A prison or a jail is just an abandoned building.
It's, again, an opportunity for us to be more transparent about what we do.
Could this be the beginning of the end for private prisons? At the height of the war on drugs and tough on crime era, the country began imprisoning more people than ever. 750,000 people.
You notice who they have on the screen. It's people who look like us predominantly on the screen, because it's the setup. 750K people were incarcerated in America in the 1980s. Today, it's well over a million, probably 2 million by now.
People were incarcerated in America. By 1997, 1.7 million. With the growing prison population, so were the costs of operating prisons. From 1980 to 1994, operating costs of state and federal prisons went from $3 million to nearly $18 million. Overcrowding was becoming increasingly problematic, and the government couldn't keep up. Private prisons were established to help maintain the $10 billion industry. Private prison companies could build facilities faster without the approved price. But the accuracy of that claim has been
just like the high rises, just like the buildings that they build today is all prefab, and they go in and they can construct the building in less than a year, a large facility in less than a year, because it's all prefab.
Been under scrutiny. No compelling government study is conclusive one way or another. In 1996, the General Accounting Office stated that they were not able to conclude that privatization saved money. A Department of Justice study from 2001 claimed that the average savings from privatization was only about 1% and not the projected 20%.
There are a lot of accounting details that make it difficult to properly compare the cost between public and private. And actually, there are a lot of factors that make it difficult to compare quality.
The private prison model was simple: build and manage buildings and secure government contracts. Charge a daily fee for each bed you fill, something called per diem, or what is commonly referred to as mandates.
Nowadays, when you go to a county jail, they charge you to process you in the jail. I believe it's $50 to process an inmate in the county jail. And if you don't have that $50, you're in debt to the county jail. If you are there to stay for a while and you don't pay for that processing fee, if someone put money on your commissary, they're going to snatch that money and put it towards your processing fee.
In 1987, Corrections Corporation of America, CCA, today called CoreCivic, charged $32.17 per inmate. By 1997, it charged the government 33% more. However, the company's costs only increased by about 8%. The company's revenue grew 27 times. Brian Evans is the CFO of Geo Group.
So where do I look? At the camera or?
About 2/3 of Geo Group's revenue comes from federal and state corrections and detention contracts. ICE contracts make up a fifth.
Our business changed over the years. In 2003, the chairman and CEO, the founder of the company, George Zoley, had a directive at that time to expand the company into other service lines, diversify, if you will, and to own and operate more of the facilities. So that process started in about 2003. We were about 500 million in revenue. Today, we're about 2.5 billion in revenue. Some of that growth has been through acquisitions, about half of it through acquisitions, and about half of it through organic growth, new contracts, new facilities, et cetera.
Amen.
In November 2019, CNBC visited a Geo Group prison in Florida. Access to prisons for journalists is unusual, but Geo was able to grant us access with state approval within a week.
We advocated on your behalf to be here because we want you.
The senior vice president of a damn prison, the Geo Group. We have to look at these companies and see who's involved with these companies and divest from these companies, because this is, it's, again, they're not interested in corrections. They're interested in lodging, and they're interested in housing people. And they set up laws to assure that they will always have occupants in these buildings. They set these laws up, and they make sure there's a revolving door to some. When someone leaves a jail, they're trying to replace that person. I'm gonna tell you like this: there's no way in this world people in corrections, whether it's a warden, whether it's a politician, or all the way down to the officer that just got hired, they're not trying to work in an empty building, and they're not trying to reform people to the point that those buildings close down. They don't want crime to go anywhere, because if crime goes somewhere, they wouldn't have a job. That's why we have these overly aggressive and overzealous police officers out on the streets. And that's why quotas are set. They want people to meet quotas with arrest, citations, what have you. And that's why they have these contempt, failure to appear arrest, to make sure, even if it's for a month or two, those buildings are occupied, especially on the state level. When someone leaves a prison, they want a replacement, and they're going to see to that they get it. The news hypocritically get up on the stations, and they report of how bad crime is and how crime is rising. In order for them to maintain their lifestyles, they have to have crime.
Here. And we like for people to come here and see what goes on, hopefully to change their minds.
South Bay Correctional Facility is owned by the state of Florida, but has been managed by GEO since 2009. a contract worth $356 million for 11 years. It houses nearly 2,000 inmates that are incarcerated for a variety of crimes, ranging from low-level charges to felonies. GEO is paid $51.11 per inmate, or man day.
What do they do? What do they use?
South Bay offers a number of educational, vocational, and substance abuse programs, many of which are mandated by the state.
State of the art too. They have state of the art. Nowadays, prisoners are allowed to have tablets. They can get on the internet and everything in prison.
Work, school, friends, you raised out for the 8.
In 2015, GEO launched its Continuum of Care program. It's an expansion of in-prison programs and includes
Greetings, peace to my brother P. Moses. Thanks for tapping in, good brother.
post-release support. According to the contract, the state pays GEO around $3 million for COC at South Bay.
It was all about, okay, what's our role and responsibility? And that was to provide the most opportunities in making sure that we did everything we could to provide the rehabilitative services. So after they left, they wouldn't come back.
Sean Killian was convicted of murder when he was 21 years old. He's 35 now. He's been at South Bay since 2011.
When you're in state-run
Peace to my brother Anthony Lowe. Thanks for tapping in, good brother.
facilities, if you have longer than a 5-year sentence, basically it's very difficult to get in programs. You know, they give priority to the guys that are about to get out, but at the same time, there's not a lot of programs offered. Here they have so many programs and everybody's encouraged to take part in them.
Between ICE, U.S. Marshals, Bureau of Prisons, and state, GEO manages about 70 facilities. We asked David Venturella how many of them look like this.
They are a hiring management company, and this company made, I believe, about $300+ million managing prisons. And also, they have judges that make deals with these prisons. I did a stream about a year or two ago where judges were sending children to jail for minor charges. They were going to jail. They were sending them to jail. They had like boot camp programs in the jails. They were sending children to jail for nothing. They sent children to jail not for fighting, not for vandalism, for watching a fight. They were sent to jail for watching a fight.
How many of them look like this? Well, I would say all of the facilities that we own either look like this or better. The ones that we manage, I would say, are pretty similar.
But the visit to South Bay is one side of the private prison story. Less than a month prior to the tour, an inmate was flown to a hospital after a stabbing. GEO Group, like CoreCivic and other private prison companies, have been plagued with litigation and claims of human rights abuses.
There's only 2 ways for a for-profit entity to create revenue.
They get all this money, say that they're providing the care, and they don't. So who makes money from private prisons? That's a good question.
One is to increase your revenue basically by increasing your market share, and secondly, to cut costs. So to lower your expenses and therefore take home more profitability. And so if you're cutting costs when it comes to caring for humans, that's generally not going to put you in a good place.
Do bad things happen in a well-run system? Yes, they do. We don't try to cover it up. And we try to learn from that.
It's a lie.
The George Hill Correctional Facility in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, for example, was operated by GEO from 2002 to 2008. 12 inmates died at the facility during that time. They resumed control of the prison in 2017 when they acquired community education centers for $360 million.
This is $360 million for community education centers. They will require CET for $360 million in an all cash transaction. Now, $360 million for that kind of money, the inmates could have what they need to suffice themselves. If they really spent that money on the inmates will have everything they need to suffice themselves when they re-enter society. But they don't spend that money. I'm absolutely certain they don't spend that money on the inmates.
Is a jail that has significant issues. We have had instances of wrongful death, suicides that have resulted in very large settlements with families. We've had issues with under maintenance.
Exactly. They're probably paying out civil lawsuits because inmates are dying, inmates are being injured. They're probably paying out civil lawsuits with that $380 million.
Resulted in, I wouldn't call it dangerous, but certainly inhumane conditions, continuous understaffing issues.
How are you going to have inhumane conditions, when you have $380 million in your hand? We know you're not spending it for the education part, that they gave you the money for. So where's the money going? And the question again is who makes money from private prisons?
Private prison companies occupy about 7% of the total state and federal correctional facilities market. That still produces billions of dollars in revenue.
Know what that's like? That's like a private prison is like running a lodging facility. You know, people are being fed, they're being watched, they're being of course they're being contained to a cell. But somebody, if it's private, somebody is getting paid a lot for running these prisons and for owning these prisons because they're private with contracts. They get a contract with the state, and the state they may certify the cop, the officer, but the state pay the prison, whoever owns the prison, to lodge the inmates. And then there's another contract for food. And there's another contract for even the officers. Exactly, my brother on Warfare K. They have quotas just like the hotels when it comes to occupancy. They gotta have a certain amount of occupancy in the prisons. And somebody's sitting back and getting paid. And also, if you look at the code of laws of how long somebody stay in the prison, it's based on the necessity of the correction officer. All the infractions that a lot of people go to jail for is based on the necessity of the correction officer. And also, they have certain towns that the correction facility actually fund that town, and everybody in that town work for the correction agency.
For detention, however, about 75% of total detainees are in private facilities. The funding of detention took off during President Obama's second term, coinciding with the increase in migrants from Central America.
The Senate bill, as currently written and is hitting the floor, would put in place the toughest border enforcement plan that America has ever seen.
Still, in August 2016, then Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates announced her plan to phase out private prisons under the Bureau of Prisons. She said that private prison companies compared poorly to public prisons largely based on data from a damning OIG report that was
Because the private prisons, they don't have no, what they'll call it, a watchful eye over the private prisons. Not that they do better in public prisons. It's just that nobody in the private prisons, because the private prison, self-explanatory, private. Everybody is under contract. Just because you see somebody's wearing whatever state they're in corrections, it doesn't necessarily mean that they work in a facility that's sanctioned by the state. A lot of these, like 75–80% of the prisons, either they are private or they're contracted.
that was published the same month.
I think the Inspector General cherry-picked some areas where we didn't match up as good with the BOP in those specific areas, but overall we had less grievances. We had better rates for inmate violence and assaults and things like that.
Overall grievances were higher in BOP prisons. However, the DOJ selected 8 categories of grievances deemed particularly relevant to safety and security. In that analysis, inmates in private prisons filed 24% more grievances. The stocks plummeted. The Yates announcement would only affect the revenue streams.
You notice what she said, the stocks plummeted. It's because it's a business and private prisons are on the stock market. When they go in, they buy and they trade and everything, prisons, people can actually invest in the prisons. Prisons is a investment on the stock market.
Coming from the federal correctional system, Moody's saw enough risk and lowered their ratings.
We knew that they, from a liability and liquidity perspective, they were fine, but from a business perspective, we didn't know sort of what was going to happen after this. There was a lot of noise, and this was headline risk that we had always incorporated in our ratings, but this came to fruition.
It didn't come to fruition. 2 months later, Donald Trump was elected president, and within days of coming into office, Attorney General Jeff Sessions rescinded the Yates memo. Stock prices soared.
Private prison companies were those that won the most the following day after the election.
The first year of the Trump administration, where things were going gangbusters for the industry.
Alan Zibel has studied the federal detention and corrections funding.
Trump has obviously been harsher in his treatment of immigrants, but it's really a continuation of a trend. Family detention started under Obama.
If you look at our
Everybody wants to put their hand in the cookie jar and get paid. These politicians, when they get in office, I don't care on what level, but in particular on their higher level, when they start going to Washington, as a matter of fact, the higher and higher they go up as a politician, the less access the people have to them. And the far removed they are from the people, the higher they go as a politician. But these politicians, when they get up on that high chain of politics, they want to make investments and they want their palms greased, and they make deals with a lot of these private entities. They come to them, and a lot of these private entities, that's millionaires and billionaires, they are lobbyists. And when you hear that these different companies and industries are endorsing a candidate, there's money involved, lots of it.
Over the last 20 years, both under Republican and Democratic administrations, talking at the federal level, there's been steady growth of 5 to 7%, and that's because of the services that we provide and the quality of the services.
Campaign donations depict the industry favoring Republicans over.
Just like I said, campaign donations. When a certain industry endorse a candidate for whatever office, that candidate, he or her, are in debt to those who endorsed them. If they give them that campaign money, they're in debt to them. They're called lobbyists.
Democrats. Core Civic and Geo Group each donated $250,000 to Trump's inaugural committee. Geo Group's contract revenue from ICE and U.S. Marshals is up by 43% from the last 2 years of President Obama to the first 2 years of the Trump administration. Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced the zero tolerance policy in April 2018. It was meant to ramp up the criminal prosecution of people entering the United States illegally.
Exactly. And those are people they could put in those buildings to occupy those buildings and get more contracts and get more money per cell, per bed, because it costs the house each and every one of them. So if they get some illegal border crossers, immigrants, they can house them and get money for the housing.
But images of separated families at the border and the detention of migrants under questionable conditions
Donald Trump! Donald Trump!
unleashed a firestorm.
The immigration policy under this particular administration really disturbed people. The administration lit a fire.
So we're keeping families together, and this will solve.
On June 20th,
He's keeping families together, housed in those abandoned jails. They're keeping the families together.
2018, President Trump signed an executive order to halt the separation of families.
And it continues to be a zero tolerance.
By then, 3,000 children had already been separated from their parents. But it continued.
3,000 children separated from their parents and warehoused in the most egregious conditions. I remember this.
Continued. And to this day, the exact number is unclear.
We had no role in operating the border facilities, which is where you saw a lot of pictures of overcrowded, inhumane conditions. Those aren't our facilities. They don't look anything like that. We also don't house unaccompanied minors.
Sparked by an outraged public, the Families Belong Together coalition was formed. 250 organizations came together to protest, collect signatures, and raise awareness and money to help families reunite. But a few wanted more. Jen Armstrong co-authored a report that looked at who was profiting off of the detention of migrants, and private prisons were a part of it.
Some judges were profiting. They was getting 40 and 50 grand per child to send to these facilities. Judges were profiting.
Is really key to understanding about private prisons is that they're actually structured as something called real estate investment trusts, or REITs, R-E-I-T-S. The interesting thing about this structure is that it actually allows these two companies to largely avoid paying income taxes. The flip side of that, however, is that they are actually required to pass on about 90% of their taxable income to investors in the form of dividends. And so they don't actually get to keep much cash on hand, which requires them to really wholly rely on a bunch of short-term borrowing for their operations, for any expansions that they want to do.
That's where Wall Street came in. By mid-2016, Geo had $1.9 billion in debt, and Core Civic, then CCA, had $1.5 billion, and 6 banks largely financed it.
We know that private prisons make money when we're detaining more people during this immigration crisis, but what people don't see are this large syndicate of banks that are providing all the financing for all the operations for these companies.
Now you see Wells Fargo, they always have their hand, or always had their hand in some type of oppression. If anyone knows who or what the origin of Wells Fargo was before they started getting it into banking. It was actually like bounty hunting, but it was bounty hunting, for recapturing those who escaped slavery, or they were like bounty hunters as far as getting people and kidnapping people and bringing them to slavery. Not some out of Africa nonsense, but they were actually kidnapping people and trying to enslave them. That's what Wells Fargo origin is.
Companies who are then also profiting through interest and fees and
Salute to my comrade, Talk Your Talk Media, Greedy Vegan. Salute to you, good brother.
various income that they get from their financing relationships.
Activists took matters into their own hands. The coalition mass organized to urge the banks to divest. By March 2019, the group got their first win when JP Morgan announced they would no longer bank with the industry. 7 banks have followed suit.
It's actually 87.4% of all of the known financing for lines of credit and term loans for these two companies.
In June 2019, Elizabeth Warren published a statement that if elected, she will shut down the use of federal private detention facilities. Many other candidates have espoused similar intentions. Nevada and California signed into law bans that would eventually phase out private prisons. Colorado and Minnesota could soon. The largest pension fund in the country, the California Public Employees Retirement System, is divesting. So have a number of city pensions. In response, the stocks of Geo and Core Civic have fallen by 30% since June 2019.
That's exactly what happens when you mass organize. And so when you have every Democratic presidential candidate saying, if I win, private prisons are abolished, that's not just about the candidates themselves. It's now a party stance. And in a two-party system, that business
When their palms are being greased because of private prisons, they're not going to discontinue private prisons when they're getting $25, $30, and $40,000 per prisoner in a state prison, and you have 15 to 20 state prisons in your state, as so the state of New Jersey. We have prisons. I mean, as small as New Jersey is, we got a lot of prisons in New Jersey. And then that's not even counting the counties that New Jersey has. They have all these counties and they have state prisons also. And when they send people to prison in the state of New Jersey, the last time I checked, it was 40 grand per prisoner.
should be very concerned.
We redid our credit facility, which is about $1.8 billion credit facility. We renewed that in June of this year. And most of the other banks participated in that process and renewed with us through 2024. So some of them since then have made public statements that they don't intend to renew in the future, but I think we'll just have to see how that plays out. We continue to dialogue with many of those banks. We dialogue with other institutions. We'll be able to access capital.
They said it is disappointing that decisions like these are being based on false information spread by politically motivated special interests who completely mischaracterize our company and the meaningful role we play in solving some of our country's biggest challenges. And that's a bunch of nonsense because it's all about the money. Because if somebody is sitting back and getting paid for a private prison, it's a private prison. That means that it's a private entity and someone owns it, not the state, not the county. It's private. So if this building has no prisoner, the private owner don't get paid. So they want those prisons, as my brother Warfare K say, they want it if they could get it to complete capacity with its occupants, they want it like that. If somebody go home, they want somebody to be placing that damn bed, cot, wherever they sleep in.
Fitch downgraded Core Civic and changed its outlook to negative. They do not rate Geo Group. Moody's has not changed their rating since 2016.
There's a lot of headline risk, obviously, and despite all the noise in the market, companies have very good liquidity. For example,
these are actual companies, and their business is prison, jail, housing people in prisons, and they talk like it's a business that make damn mattresses or something, but they're in the business of housing people in a jail. Fortune 500 stock market prisons.
Core Civic has one bond coming due next year, but they have enough. They have over 600 million in liquidity right now. Geo, they don't have anything due to 2023 either. Both of them are, their renewal, their retention rates so far, both of them are in the high 90s. They both reported earnings growth and what they call NOI growth, which is net operating income per the different contracts. They both have added, it's funny to say it this way, but they all have added people to their beds, or they call it heads in the beds. So from our perspective, we're very comfortable where our ratings are right now.
Hadan Seagram is an assistant professor of finance at NYU and has studied Geo Group and Core Civic's balance sheets over a 5-year period.
The business is largely dependent on who's funding and who's in power rather than the fundamentals itself. Therefore, as long as this administration is willing to fund them, they're going to be doing reasonably well. Only issue with these companies, they don't have enough debt financing for growth. So if they don't have that, and if the major banks pull out of it, like Bank of America, JPM, and Wells Fargo, they can be in a steady state, but they cannot grow as much as they want to.
Those concerns may be slowly vanishing. After failing to raise a $250 million term loan back in June,
in so many ways, in so many reasons, a person could go to jail. And a lot of them, they may be considered crimes, but they're victimless. And they still get sent to jail.
Debtwire reported on December 13, 2019, that Core Civic was working with a Japanese investment bank to raise the money. Something activists have long feared could be happening.
Divestment is as much about the financial conversation and the financial impact as it is about shifting culture, shifting the narrative, and getting policy to reflect the values of the people. So regardless of how strong Core Civics and Geo Group's financials are, the culture can still eliminate them.
A lot can happen between now and when the financing terms mature for Core Civic and Geo Group. While significantly more expensive, more foreign banks like Nomura can step in and fill the gap. An election can swing things dramatically, and the companies can continue to diversify their portfolios to protect themselves.
Set the children free!
All the while, the American public is more engaged than ever.
You can say, is it the beginning of the end, and does the end look like 2020? Maybe not. But whether the end is 2020 or the end is 2024, it's inevitable. It's coming.
The toss of a coin, pretty much.
I had more on this situation as far as the private prisons and who owns them and who get paid for private prisons, but I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on to a trendy topic. Now, this video is courtesy of Law and Crime Network. It's all 47 shocking allegations against P. Dirty.
P. Diddy behind bars and indicted on federal sex trafficking and racketeering allegations. But those aren't the only accusations Diddy's facing. In fact, there are dozens of allegations dating as far back as the 90s. We're breaking down all 47 shocking allegations against P. Diddy and what all this could mean for the future of his case. I'm Sierra Gillespie, and this is Law and Crime News. Sean Diddy Combs has now been behind bars for 1 week after he was indicted by a federal grand jury on some pretty serious charges. And with this major development in the case comes a renewed interest in the many allegations against the now disgraced rapper. So let's start with the federal indictment. That lists nearly 20 allegations against Diddy in support of the charges he faces: racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. From the jump on page 1, prosecutors come out swinging, alleging Diddy is guilty of sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. The indictment goes on to allege Diddy showed a pattern of abuse, mostly against women, that included verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, including the use of extensive grooming tactics. So let's break these down a bit. Of the physical abuse, Diddy is accused of throwing, punching, kicking, and dragging some of his victims. We saw proof of that this spring when CNN released
I think they have the evidence on that part. We can actually see that, and it's apparent.
the infamous hotel video showing Diddy brutally assault his then girlfriend Cassie in a hotel hallway. That incident isn't blatantly referenced in the federal indictment, and neither are any names. So we'll get to the specifics on that when we take a look at the civil suits against Diddy. But the indictment does allege that Diddy hid his victims for days at a time to recover from the injuries he inflicted without being publicly observed. Federal prosecutors allege Diddy intimidated these victims into his orbit and then forced them to participate in something he called freak-offs. These freak-offs were elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. So during these sessions, Diddy would force victims to use drugs, have sex with prostitutes, and be recorded doing all this, sometimes without their knowledge. Diddy also allegedly forced victims to carry illegal firearms, often through coercion and the assistance of his associates working for the Combs enterprise. Not only would these associates help suppress the victims, but they also arranged the freak-offs by booking hotel rooms and stocking the rooms with required freak-off necessities like baby oil or personal lubricant. These associates would also procure sex workers and IVs that were given to both Combs and the victims after these freak-off sessions to help them recover from the physical exertion and drug use. As part of all this, Diddy and his associates transported and caused to be transported commercial sex workers across state lines and internationally. Okay, I know you're multitasking when you're watching our videos, and if you're out running errands, listen up. I have to tell you about the free app Upside that gets you cash back on daily essentials. I now use it every time I pump gas. It's so easy and free, so why not? All you have to do is get the Upside app and then claim an offer for whatever you're buying. You pay as usual and then follow the steps on survivor Jane Doe across state lines when he flew her from Michigan to New York in 2003. Jane Doe filed civil suit against Diddy in fall 2023, alleging that 20 years prior, he raped her when she was only 17. According to Jane Doe's suit, she met one of Diddy's associates in Michigan and was flown on Diddy's private jet to his studio in New York. Jane Doe also provided pictures of her with Diddy in the studio, bolstering her accusations. Once there, Diddy allegedly drugged Jane Doe and forced her to drink alcohol.
Why would somebody so young trust? Why would they trust that? Why would somebody's parent trust that? Why would somebody entrust their child with a grown man? I don't care what they are, producer, mogul, songwriter, I don't care what they are, you don't entrust your child with no grown ass man when he's when that child, whether it's a female or male, this man is in his 30s and you trust your 10-year-old, your 12-year-old with him, that's just plain crazy to me.
Hall. After that, he allegedly raped her before sending her back to the Midwest. It's a similar story from Liza Gardner, who also filed civil suit last fall. She alleges Diddy also raped her in New York, but way back in 1990. Gardner's lawsuit alleges she and a friend met Diddy at a party, and then at an after party, he gave her alcohol.
He should have been brought down then. This should have been out back then. He shouldn't have been allowed to get this successful. He should have been brought down then. A lot of people coming out now, but he should have been brought down all the way back from when he was doing this nonsense.
Allegedly raped her before another man also raped her. During all this, both men allegedly also raped Gardner's friend. A couple days later, Combs came to the home where Liza Gardner and her friend were staying. He was irate and began assaulting and choking Liza Gardner to the point that she passed out. That brings us to the next allegation that has stark similarities to Liza Gardner's. Joy Dickerson Neal alleges Diddy raped her in 1991, also in New York. Echoing what prosecutors would write in a federal indictment against Diddy, Dickerson Neal alleges Diddy recorded this sexual assault. Her lawsuit also argues that she's the victim of revenge porn, as Diddy showed this recording to multiple people without her consent. All three of these civil lawsuits were filed last November under the New York Survivors Act. And so too was a bombshell civil suit filed by Cassandra Ventura, Diddy's ex-girlfriend, who's also known as the singer Cassie. It was with Cassie's lawsuit that we first heard in-depth accusations about Diddy's alleged illegal activity. To start, there's the gun allegation that on at least 2 occasions, Diddy demanded Cassie.
I knew once this video was released, it was the beginning of the end. And it's a long time coming, but it's good that it's happening. It's late, but I'm glad we're not going to say never.
Cassie hold his gun in her purse. The lawsuit goes on to state, quote, there was no clear reason why Mr. Combs required her to hold his guns, except to reinforce to his young girlfriend that he was violent, powerful, and dangerous. Beyond the gun allegations, Cassie put forth some other major accusations in her 35-page lawsuit. She says Diddy beat her, sometimes so severely that she had to hide out in hotels for days at a time, waiting for the bruises to heal. Cassie also alleged Diddy raped her and forced her to have sex with prostitutes and even recorded this. Then there's the allegation that Diddy got jealous when Cassie began flirting with rapper Kid Cudi in 2011. Cassie says that in 2012, Diddy told her that he was going to blow up Kid Cudi's car and that he wanted to ensure that Kid Cudi was home with his friends when it happened. Around that time, Kid Cudi's car exploded in his driveway. The allegations brought forth in Cassie's lawsuit were shocking, and so too were the accusations brought months later in yet another civil suit filed by Rodney Jones, also known as the producer Lil Rod. He began working with Diddy in 2022 on the Love album, and soon, he alleges, the abuse began. Lil Rod accuses Diddy of sexual assault, writing he was, quote, the victim of constant, unsolicited, and unauthorized groping and touching of his anus by Mr. Combs. He also alleges Diddy and his team were grooming Lil Rod.
This is very believable because this dude was trying to touch somebody who could knock his damn head off.
drug trafficking scheme. He says there are hundreds of hours of footage and audio recordings of Mr. Combs, his staff, and his guests engaging in some serious illegal activity because Diddy apparently forced Lil Rod to constantly record him. The allegations continue, saying that Diddy covered up multiple shootings. To start, there's the New York nightclub shooting in 1999. Lil Rod alleges Diddy required his then-girlfriend Jennifer Lopez to transport his illegal firearm into the NYC nightclub. The court docs also allege Diddy forced his then-artist Shine to assume responsibility for the shooting of several individuals. Lil Rod's civil suit points to another alleged cover-up too.
The female who was shot in that club said Diddy shot her. She said Shine didn't shoot her. She said Diddy shot her.
This time for a shooting outside Diddy's Chalice Studios on September 12th, 2022. According to court docs, Diddy, his son Justin, and Justin's friend referred to as G were all there when things got heated. Lil Rod heard multiple gunshots ring out, and then he found G on the bathroom floor in the fetal position. Lil Rod says he was bleeding out of his hip and leg area. After that, Mr. Combs gave strict instructions to inform the police that he had nothing to do with the shooting. He also forced Mr. Jones to lie to the police by telling them that G was shot standing outside the studio by a drive-by assailant. So that specific allegation involves Diddy's son Justin, but another allegation and entirely separate civil suit involves his other son, Christian, or King Combs. Grace Omar K alleges that Christian Combs sexually assaulted her on a yacht in December 2022, and all this was facilitated by Diddy. That suit was filed in April, and in May, former model Crystal McKinney filed suit against Diddy too, alleging he drugged and sexually assaulted her in his New York studio back in 2003. Diddy's former bad boy artists have spoken out too, including members of Danity Kane, the girl group that Diddy helped form on MTV's Making the Band 3. Singer Aubrey O'Day alleges Diddy underpaid
Yeah, Diddy's known for underpaying artists. A lot of artists are or were disgruntled by him being, a bad paymaster. He wouldn't pay. He didn't like paying. He loved facilitating services and like for us, like producers and artists coming in and songwriters that write songs for him. He loved facilitating that, but he don't like paying people. Never did.
members of the band, and later offered her the publishing rights to her songs if she signed it.
Now, Diddy offered people the publishing rights to their song. He gave a lot of his former artists the publishing to their songs. But this was after the songs peaked and exhausted all of its potential sales and revenue that can be made on the songs. They exhausted. So he gonna come give you some songs that's worth nothing unless like a ad, someone for an ad want to use your song for whatever commercial, whatever ad or whatever. These songs are not gonna make any money.
NDA, and there was a catch to that.
And in order to get that, I have to release him for any claims or wrongdoings or actions prior to the date of the release. I have to sign an NDA that I will never disparage Puff, Bad Boy, Janice Combs, or Justin Combs music or EMI or Sony ever in public.
Just this month, Aubrey O'Day's Danity Kane bandmate Dawn Richard filed suit against Diddy. She alleged Diddy verbally and sexually abused her, all with the intentional infliction of emotional distress. There are so many layers to this story, dozens of allegations, civil suits, and criminal charges. And all this while Diddy sits behind bars in the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. But let's begin with those federal charges. Here's former federal prosecutor Gene Rossi. So going off and talking about those three charges, initially to me, when I looked over the indictment, I was like, only 3? It's only 14 pages. That's kind of small, short. But according to you, it sounds like RICO could be a giant charge.
I was surprised when I read this indictment that it is so short.
what that tells me is the prosecutors just wanted to get this indictment out there to move this case along. This case, 14 pages is nothing.
They want to hold him so he don't coerce, he don't pay off people, he don't intimidate people, because he can't do that where he's at, because he's not in control over the money that he has, far as like paying goons off. He can't do that where he's at. So they want to contain him so they can gather the evidence that they need.
Predict that they're going to supersede, amend the indictment, and maybe not add more charges, but add more allegations under each charge, as they say, to add more meat to the bones and have what they call a speaking indictment. A speaking indictment is one that's very, very detailed. It's almost like reading a novel. And a speaking indictment can be over 100 pages. This one is sort of a bare bones general indictment that I predict the federal prosecutors are going to amend, supersede, and add more information.
So you said they'll likely add more allegations, more information to kind of beef up their argument, but we still only have these 3 charges. And I'm sure the federal prosecutors are bringing the ones that they can get a conviction on, right? The ones that have the most amount of evidence against Diddy. Do you think that's why they only brought 3 just to secure a conviction?
I think they only need 3, and here's why. The RICO charge is so expansive.
It all depends on the severity of the 3. 3 severe, concrete charges that's undeniable. That's enough. But I believe my sentiment is when they start looking and people start coming forward and testifying, they're gonna open up Pandora's box. I guarantee you.
That if they only use that one count, RICO, that would be enough for me. So they don't need 20, 30 counts.
That RICO charge is going to be the charge that open up Pandora's box, and so much is going to come of the RICO charges because that expands very broad when you talk about criminal enterprises.
Good counts, that's enough because that RICO charge by itself is an extremely serious charge.
As far as a potential conviction, obviously down the line, and as you said, Diddy is presumed innocent, but if there is a conviction, what sort of sentence could he face? Multiple years behind bars?
Under the sentencing guidelines, which are not binding on a court, he's looking at significant time. Probably my back of the envelope arithmetic calculation is at least 10 years. At least.
Criminal defense attorney Adam Conta agrees. The federal indictment is problematic for Diddy.
It lays out what they believe is a pattern of illegal activity, all in the names and the furtherance of the Combs enterprise. I think it lacks some details, but we have, because this is an ongoing investigation and because it's sort of been in the public sphere for a while, we have more details than we normally would. They've laid out a pattern of conspiracy and racketeering that they've charged him with. But part of that is obviously that one of the victims is his ex-girlfriend, Kathy, who filed this major lawsuit last year in November against him. But we kind of have the details from that lawsuit as well. So we can kind of insert those as really the jump off point to how we got here now today. But he's got some real legal challenges ahead of him. Absolutely.
You brought up a good point about the pattern, showing that Diddy had a pattern to break the law in this many ways. And it all goes back kind of to Cassie and the civil suit.
This dude broke the law. And I don't understand the stronghold he had on people. You do something and you come telling me that you got to take the charge or you got to take the fall for something that you did, they going to find out, bro. Because if I'm not a part of your conspiracy and the bull crap that you're doing, you're not going to involve me in any kind of way. And I would find it insulting for you to even ask me. If we are part of the conspiracy and the caper together, you don't got to worry about me saying nothing. I don't even know you if I get caught. But if I'm not involved in your conspiracy and your caper, trust me, I'm pointing right at your ass.
Suit that she filed. Obviously, they had a relationship for several years. She alleges some pretty serious accusations against him. So how important is Cassie going to be in regards to this federal case?
Well, she's going to be incredibly important in terms of her lawsuit is really what opened up the public's attention to it. And so,
and it's also her part in this is also going to be character witness of Diddy. Perfect character witness, because she's the one who we seen him beating on and dragging down the hall.
So that's really what got everyone going. That's what got the authorities looking into her more. I mean, it was only a year ago that he got the key to the city here in New York. And now here he is indicted in the Southern District, right? So what happened in a year?
How ironic is that? The one who gave him the key to the city has been indicted also and can potentially be in that same damn jail.
Someone to have fallen so far, and not just got the keys to the city a year ago. He was what was he? He was given like the Lifetime Achievement Award in the VMAs. That was just last year too.
Look at that. 2 criminals. 2 very dishonest men gave him the key to the city. And you were so self-righteous that you asked for it back because you felt that, he wasn't. I mean, I agree with him not having it, but Eric Adams is crooked also. I always thought he was, because first, he's an ex-cop, NYPD. All of them over there is crooked.
I mean, this is someone who is at the top of the public sphere in terms of reverence, in terms of respect, in terms of what they mean to the city and to the community. And for it to turn around this fast, I think we have to look directly at Cassie and her lawsuit filed on November 16th. And even though they settled it a day later, again, the details of what was alleged got out there. And then what that really did, just like the Me Too movement, it started other people who are alleged victims of his thinking, well, maybe now is my time to come forward. If in fact that they felt threatened by Diddy, if in fact they were coerced not to say anything through violent threats, through physical threats, through emotional threats, and potentially of having whatever acts they committed with Diddy being recorded,
or a payoff, or some blackmailing. I got you on tape. I'm going to show it, whatever. They're still coercing, whether it's violent or, manipulation.
and even having those used against them as electronic threats. After Cassie's lawsuit, they started to come out. And then you saw another lawsuit in December, and then another one and another one. And so there were a couple that came out that really started steamrolling this sort of this change in a public opinion of him, just like happened with R. Kelly, although these are separate charges, and they have knocked a little while to kind of get around this notion of this pop superstar who we've grown to love for decades, and now kind of peel back the onions to his personal persona that could be quite disturbing. And so, even though she is not going to be, she might not be doing interviews, and she might not be out there sort of as the public figurehead of this indictment, she's certainly at the genesis of it and is the reason this whole thing got rolling.
And what continued the ball rolling was Lil Rod's suit. For this, I'll turn to former prosecutor Melba Pearson. Obviously, every lawsuit is very important in this case, but Lil Rod's actually mentions hundreds of hours of video footage. He's talking about these illegal activities, making these pretty severe allegations, but says, hey, there's audio, video, photos. Do you think that was a big reason why the feds executed those search warrants back in March?
Absolutely, because they had to seize all of that evidence to be able to use it at trial later on down the line. So they now had specific things they were looking for because remember, a search warrant can't just be a fishing expedition. You have to be able to detail in the warrant what you're expecting to find or what you are seeking. And so with Little Rod's lawsuit, the feds were able to be like, okay, we're looking for video. We're looking for surveillance video that may have been located in this particular room. We're looking for a particular time frame when these incidences occurred. So what evidence can we find that substantiates what occurred during that time frame while we're looking through the house? So it all came together to be able to give the feds the information they needed to be able to do these searches effectively, follow the trail of evidence, and then lead to the indictment.
You know, all roads kind of lead back to these civil suits because obviously now we have the criminal side of things, which you've talked about, and that's going to be something we'll follow closely. But the civil side is kind of what paved the way. And I'm wondering now.
And they're going to make sure that he's tied up in so much litigation that by the time they're done with him, he's going to be broke. I keep saying that these people do the dirt with you to get the dirt on you. They know you did it because they was there with you when you was doing it. They know. And they break their tools when they're done with them. This dude really think or thought that he was going to pass that on to his children after he's not here anymore. They don't allow that with our people. You don't get out of something filthy clean. You jumped out of something filthy. You didn't get in clean, so you're going to leave dirty.
Now that Diddy is in custody, what's going to happen to these civil suits? Are they stalled? What would that look like?
What generally happens is that the civil attorneys will sort of wait and see what happens in the criminal case because so much of the evidence that comes out of the criminal case could be a treasure trove for the civil lawsuit. So, for instance, if Diddy were to get on the stand and testify.
That's what they do. Once they're done with the criminal side of this, it's going to open up the floodgates to the civil. And between paying civil lawsuits and paying for those lawyers in these litigations for the criminal charges that he have, going to be broke. O.J. Simpson broke.
Testify, which I highly doubt he would. If he were to get on the stand and testify, his testimony can be admissible in the civil lawsuit, especially if he gives conflicting statements. He can be what we called impeached, or basically, to use the colloquialism, basically called out like, hey, you said this on this date. Now at the criminal trial, now at the civil trial, you're saying something different, which is the truth, that sort of thing. So, you know, I think that the civil lawsuits may be on pause, not to say that they're going to be dropped or anything along those lines, but the criminal case is what's going to take precedence right now. And then once that's disposed of meaning guilty plea or a trial, guilty, not guilty, whatever the case may be, mistrial, then the civil lawsuits will pick back up again.
After his arrest, Diddy pleaded not guilty to federal charges. A statement from his legal team reads, quote, Sean Diddy Combs is a music icon, self-made entrepreneur, loving family man, and proven philanthropist who has spent the last...
See, this attorney will say all of this if he had the tapes of Diddy doing what he's accused of. He's retained and he gets paid in the millions, or he's going to get paid in the millions to defend Diddy. So he'll say anything on his behalf. because he's paid to do so. That's why it's called defense. You're going to defend every damn thing the man do, and you have no ethics because you know this man's guilty as they say he is, but you're his attorney. You're doing your job, Mark.
30 years building an empire, adoring his children, and working to uplift the Black community. He is an imperfect person.
This makes me sick when you have an Italian talking about this man who serves to the detriment of our people. You say he worked to uplift the Black community. That's a bunch of crock. And he knows this, but he'll say it in a straight face.
But is not criminal. To his credit, Mr. Combs has been nothing but cooperative with this investigation, and he voluntarily relocated to New York last week in anticipation of these charges. Please reserve your judgment until you have all the facts. These are the acts of an innocent man with nothing to hide, and he looks forward to clearing his name in court. That was a look at all 47 shocking allegations against disgraced rapper P. Diddy. To be sure you never miss an update in his case, make sure to...
Now, I'm going to move on from this. I don't want to spend too much time on it. This is, order through chaos. And I didn't want to spend too much time on it, but I'm going to go to what Suge Knight said about him. This is about 18 minutes long. I'm going to go to what Suge Knight said.
Most important thing is there's got to be a solution.
Let me run that back.
For a whole bunch of years, for decades.
Run that back. Okay.
And at the same time, nobody wants this to be true, and it shouldn't have to be true.
Suge Knight, the founder of Death Row Records and one-time enemy of Sean Diddy Combs, talks about Combs' arrest by the feds in an interview with News Nation. I look at what the one-time record company owner said about Combs from behind prison walls. Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Suge Knight doesn't hold back. He might be in prison for killing a man, running him down with a car in Compton, but that doesn't mean he's not sharing what's on his mind, especially when it comes to Sean Combs. Combs, of course, is in a federal prison right now being held without bond following his arrest on sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy charges. Combs has pleaded not guilty to those charges, which appear at this point to involve one victim, Cassie Ventura, Combs' longtime ex-girlfriend, who sued him last November. Combs settled that lawsuit the next day. Then came a flurry of other lawsuits filed by other accusers, including women and even a man, record producer Rodney Little Rod Jones. The accusers claimed they were drugged and sexually assaulted by Combs. Combs has denied ever sexually assaulting anyone, but a video aired by CNN in May showed that Combs beat Cassie Ventura in a hotel hallway back in 2016. This happened in Los Angeles. Combs apologized a couple of days later on Instagram. So what does Suge Knight have to say about this? And why is anyone interested in what he has to say? Well, Knight and Combs go way back, and it wasn't always pretty. In the mid-90s, there was the so-called East Coast-West Coast feud where Combs had rapper Biggie Smalls at Bad Boy Records and Knight had signed Tupac Shakur at his Death Row Records. Shakur was murdered in Vegas in 1996, and Biggie Smalls was shot to death in LA the following spring. But that was a long time ago, almost 30 years ago now, and we're talking about what's going on today and the allegations being made against Sean Combs. Suge Knight is currently doing time in a California prison for running over a man and killing him. He'll be eligible for parole in 2034. Knight might be behind bars, But that doesn't mean he's not doing things or that he's staying quiet. He actually has a lot to say.
We just have to really work hard back today.
Suge Knight actually hosts a podcast entitled Collect Call with Suge Knight, where he calls from prison and talks about a lot of things. And this week, he called Chris Cuomo on News Nation, and he had a lot to say about Sean Combs and what's going on with his case and the allegations of sex trafficking being made against him. One thing he talked about is whether or not he believes Sean Combs is safe being in jail. Sean Combs didn't want to be in jail. He wanted to post bail, a bail of $50 million, but the judge denied that request. He's in the MDC, and that's a federal prison.
He should not be able to just throw money at that and get out of jail. He's right where he belongs. $50 million. He just want to be able to just throw money at things like he's used to doing. Just throw money at something and then walk around with his chest out like he didn't do anything wrong.
Prison with a really awful reputation. Knight was asked whether he thinks Combs is safe behind bars.
I don't ever want to say he's in danger, and neither should he say that. Because once he gets to the point where they feel he's going to be suicidal to himself, harmful to himself, once they put him on suicide watch, you have the rights to nothing. No socks, no drawers, no T-shirt, no blanket, no sheets. You ask.
And then not only that, once they talk about he being suicidal, they could kill him and say he did it to himself. So the best thing for you to do, if you don't want to be in danger of somebody, especially, some nefarious things by the prison guards or anybody else that you come in contact with, just say, no, I am not suicidal. I'm not thinking about killing myself. I want to live. You got to say that emphatically. So nobody could put that suicidal stigma on you.
So naked in a cell as a crazy man. So he definitely don't want to do that. And the other advice I would tell him, maybe he should get on the Jewish diet. Because the kosher meals is way better than the food somebody else is making for you. At least they're going to come hot. They're going to come sealed, and you got to be the one to open them. That's very important.
What about people trying to hurt him?
Go to jail. One of the things is this. I don't care who you are. Prison and jail is a negative environment. If somebody can do something to them and get a name for themselves, they're going to actually do it. Or they can do whatever they feel they got to do to prove themselves. But we also got to learn. We got to learn from our mistakes. Everything don't have to be a mistake. You got to better yourself. But we all know what we signed up for in life.
Suge Knight is obviously in prison, and we know a lot about him because he's a celebrity, of course. He grew up in Compton. He played football at UNLV, and then he came back to Compton and founded Death Row Records. But do you want to know more about him, maybe about his criminal and traffic records? I went to Truthfinder to see what I could find. Suge's first name is really Marion. I put in Marion Knight, and his criminal and traffic records come up. It shows Suge Knight was charged in 1994 with felony second-degree robbery and a misdemeanor in 2010. Now he's serving time for killing a man by hitting him with his car. Even if you're not in true crime, Truthfinder can show you things from a person's past and registered sex offenders near you. Also, you can use it to see what's online about yourself. You can get 50% off right now of confidential background reports. Just log on to truthfinder.com/LCCrimeFix. Happens to them impacts their children. Knight talked about how Combs being in prison is likely impacting his kids and the accusers in the case, how this might be impacting their children as well.
Well, first of all, I'm not calling you and nobody else getting nobody to believe anything regarding him.
To not go through that is to not engage in that. So, on both sides, especially his side, because he victimized them. He knew what he was doing when he did it.
Like I said, and I always say, me personally, I don't jump up and down and cheer no black man going to prison or any other man, any other human being going to prison. Because people think prison is always the answer. I'm not saying a lot of people don't deserve to do their time and see what's going on. But at the same time, that's not no cheerful thing, because when you look at it, that man have kids.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever affects him definitely affects his kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's a lot of victims involved in it, and whatever affects them affects their kids. So it's not a good thing to be talking about any about the next person. But it's not a gray area with me.
Now, I think anybody can empathize with children being impacted by their parents' situation and trauma. As the interview went on, talk turned to the freak-offs. Those are, of course, the alleged parties that were described in Cassie Ventura's civil lawsuits and that the U.S. attorney described when announcing the indictment.
The indictment alleges that Combs abused and exploited women and other people for years, and in a variety of ways. As alleged, Combs used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers, some of whom he transported or caused to be transported over state lines. Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics, such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant. As alleged, when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse so that they would participate in the freak-offs, and that Combs hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims, at times by their hair. On one occasion in March of 2016, that conduct was captured on video and later reported in the media. Specifically, Combs kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a victim in a Los Angeles hotel when the victim was attempting to flee. As alleged, these assaults often resulted in injuries to the victims, which took days or weeks to heal. In addition to the violence, the indictment alleges that Combs threatened and coerced victims to get them to participate in the freak-offs. He used the embarrassing and sensitive recordings he made of the freak-offs as collateral against the victims. And the indictment alleges that he maintained control over the victims in several ways, including by giving them drugs, by giving and threatening to take away financial support or housing, by promising them career opportunities, by monitoring their whereabouts, and even by dictating their physical appearance.
Days-long sex parties with sex workers where participants sometimes needed IVs to recover. It sounds awful. Suge Knight talked about where he thinks Sean Combs came up with this type of thing.
And at the same time, Puffy didn't react or get where he got or doing those things or those allegations by himself. He was taught from people before him, and he did it to the younger people.
Exactly. These things were done to him, and he didn't have the fortitude to go to people to report this and bring who did it to him to justice, because if he did do that, he wouldn't be where he's at today. He wanted that bad boy startup money, and he did what he did to get that bad boy startup money. And he sacrificed and he sold his complete soul to get what he wanted. He lost his soul to gain riches.
The people after him. And we can talk all day and say
Peace to
what's
my
true,
brother
what's not
Bronx
true.
Black Power God.
Only true part about it is videos, conversations, and people can see what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
But for it being happy and proud and say what do people think, that's irrelevant.
So Suge Knight basically claims that Sean Combs learned this behavior from other higher-ups in the record industry based on how he was treated when he was younger.
Is that what you're suggesting about Sean Combs, that he was sexually abused and he now sexually abuses?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think he repeat what was done to him. And like I said, if you look at Russell,
The ones who brought him in, he was working for Uptown Records. I remember Uptown Records was formed. I was at Zanzibar in Newark in 1986, right after Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the rap group, had broken up. Andre Harrell got a label deal, and he started Uptown Records back in 1986. And Andre Harrell brought him in. I'm not going to speculate about what happened between the two of them, but it was Andre Harrell who brought him in. This dude was commuting back and forth from Howard U to New York. And he was working with Andre Harrell as an intern. He got fired. After getting fired, he got him a deal with the same person who gave Andre Harrell his deal, and that was Clive Davis. Arista. Arista was the parent company of Uptown, and Arista was the parent company of Bad Boys also.
Simmons, you know the truth. Andre Harrell, you know the truth. Clive Davis, you know the truth. Jimmy Iovine, you know the truth. It was at a point where it's like a whole sex trade because it was the line for people to participate. She was messing with Jimmy Iovine when Jimmy Iovine was married to one of the most incredible women in the world named Vicky, and she used to go around and sing that song and change the lyrics to make it put Vicky down. So there's not certain things that all of a sudden you got this. The industry is a quick business. It's been like that for a long time.
Mm.
And the casting couch is real, but it's for women and men. But far from all that, I think the most important thing is I feel like they should let Puffy tell his truth. I'm quite sure he's going to expose a lot of people. I'm sure he's going to move forward with it. But I don't think it should be a situation like the Epstein thing where they found him hanging from the ceiling of dead before the truth come out. So, first of all, you got to start with.
If they think he's going to do that, you know the rest. If they have any inclination that Diddy's going to come out and just spill everything, we all know what's going to happen before they allow that to happen. Too many people have walked into those homes where he was giving those parties. Too many people.
At the top. You're starting with the top.
And it's not narrowed down to entertainers. On any level or genre of entertainment, it's not narrowed down to him. I'm speaking about CEOs of Fortune 500 companies and politicians. So before they allow him to bring all that out, you know the rest.
Clive Davis, Russell Simmons, Andre Harrell, Jimmy Iovine. Even if you take Jimmy Iovine, he had an allegation from him, same thing, it went away. You take Jimmy Iovine. They told me at Universal and Interscope, they said, you know what? We can't deal with artists that gets in trouble. And your artist gets in trouble, they talk crazy.
So that's a really bold claim being made against other record executives, some really big names. Clive Davis vehemently denied the allegation in a statement to Cuomo saying, "This is a completely fabricated thread being trafficked by an incarcerated felon. Mr. Knight's assertions about Clive Davis are 100% false, as nothing of the sort ever happened." But what is interesting is Suge Knight is not the first person to suggest Sean Combs learned this behavior. Listen to what Combs's former bodyguard, Gene Deal, told the Art of Dialogue podcast recently.
When they get down to all the facts and all what happened, he may belong in jail, bro. And that's not my doing. That's not Cassie doing. That's his doing and his learned behavior from the people that mentored him.
Now, that term mentor is self-explanatory. What was done to him, a guy with the name mentor was doing it to those he were cultivating and teaching, giving information to. See, we need to look up the definitions of these words and who the word mentor was named after, or what the term came from. Because that would give us the origin of the word, and it would give us the origin of the behavior. Now I'm going to look that up. Who was mentor in the Odyssey? Now, in Homer's Odyssey, mentor is an old friend of Odysseus who was tasked with caring for Odysseus' son while he was away fighting in the Trojan War. Mentor is also the name of the son of Alcimus. However, Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare, disguised herself as mentor to guide on his journey to find his father. Athena's guidance is particularly poignant and provides the most advice to Telechinus. The word mentor comes from the character in the Odyssey and has come to mean a wise and trusted teacher or counselor. And for teaching and counseling the person who was being mentored, things happened. And they used the kind of like a father on mentors and kings in the Odyssey. The origin of the word is exactly what was done to Diddy and what he was doing to Usher, to Justin Bieber, and any other young person that came up under Diddy or anybody else who does that type of behavior. Just know the word mentor has a terrible, dark origin.
You got to realize, man, he learned from Andre Harrell. He learned from Russell Simmons. He learned from Clyde Davis. You understand? When those people are telling you that they were heavy into the drugs, they was heavy into beating women and doing things at that age, at that crazy stage, that's going to make him think that he could get away with the same thing that they was getting away with back then. You understand? The things that he was saying, the touchy-feely between two men and all that stuff like that, man. All that, he learned that from them dudes.
So those are two people who knew Sean Combs, saying that Sean Combs learned this behavior which Sean Combs' attorney at this point has called consensual. Knight then offered his thoughts on the freak-offs.
Well, number one, luckily, I wasn't their first choice. Their second choice, I wasn't no choice to be at those freaky parties. But you know what they show. They used to have a thing in the industry, right? And the sad thing about it, are people that everybody know what time it is. So at the same time, they used to have a joke. They never played this joke with me. And they used to walk in the Interscope office. They'd go back there and they'd be like, hey, we passed the test. I said, we haven't did the test. One dude said, well, don't say that in front of Mr. Knight because he's going to take it offensive and hurt somebody. I said, well, whatever it is, I probably would take it offensive when somebody would get their ass whooped. You know, that was me in those days. But they used to have these guys, they used to call it the boiled egg test. They could take a boiled egg, a raw boiled egg, and have those guys put their pants down and bend over and they stick it up. The eggs break, they say they're not ready yet. They ain't put enough work in. This is Hollywood. So everybody want to go act like they don't know what's going on.
Hold on a second.
But if you just look, that's all you got to do.
I have never heard of anything like that. So if I haven't heard about it, just assume a lot of people haven't heard that before. But you think it's on video?
Let's stop for a second.
Go ahead, Shug.
Yeah, listen, and also, have you ever been to any puffy parties?
No.
You sure they had a long time to think about it. But if you haven't been in those butt naked parties, even some of the preachers been in those parties, and they wasn't on their.
Exactly. Like, i.e., what's that man name? TD Jakes. Been to one. He's been to one. I don't know who else, but I can call that name. I'm not going to speculate who else was there, but I know he was there because he's seen at the party. He was seen there. Pictures.
On their knees, he's praying for God. See, they was praying for somebody to have come real quick or something. But I wasn't there, but there's proof of it. But at the same time, everybody want to look around and act like something going on that wasn't right. It's the facts of life in the industry.
So that was kind of graphic, but this is what Suge Knight is saying. And at one point, he ran in these circles. Knight also talked about Sean Combs, who he calls Puffy, because that's how he knew him in the 90s, as Puffy, being violent with Cassie Ventura and a woman he called Capricorn.
Jimmy, Security, and Puffy pulled up on Capricorn and started telling her that she got to settle with him. She got to take this money. She got to do this deal. And whooping her ass and doing all that they took her to. And guess what? She settled. She took the money. And the money didn't come from Puffy. It didn't come from Shimmy. It came from Interscope and Universal. And they paid her through it like she was getting a paycheck for working there. And then they made the girl, I think she had to pay taxes on it. So that's even more crazier. So when you look at all these things and everybody want to say Puffy, 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 don't get me wrong. Yeah, Puffy stepped in this shit, and even if he wiped the shit off his shoe, it still stinks. But he's not the only one. They got all the tapes.
So there you have Suge Knight saying that Sean Combs is not the only one. He's making these bold.
He's not the only one. There's an origin to this. There's an origin to this. He chose to get involved and be a part of this. But I agree with Suge. He's not the only one. It goes deeper and it gets darker than dude.
Bold claims about the music industry. Sean Combs has pleaded not guilty, as I've told you. Here's his lawyer, Mark Agnifilo.
His resolve is the same. He believes he's innocent. I believe he's innocent. And we're going to fight this case with all of our might until we don't have to fight any longer.
You say he believes he's innocent. Listen to the language. That means to believe something it's like you're not certain. You say he believes he's innocent. That means that he did something that he's not willing to take accountability for. So he believes he's innocent. If I'm innocent, I'm going to know of a certainty, emphatically, that I'm innocent, not I believe I'm innocent. To believe something, it's like you're not even sure. You just believe.
The fight continues. We're not giving up by a long shot. I told Mr. Combs I'm going to try and get his case to trial as quickly as possible. I'm going to try and minimize the amount of time he spends in very, very difficult and I believe inhumane housing conditions in the special housing unit of the Metropolitan Detention Facility. And I'm going to do everything that I can to move his case as quickly as possible.
And Mark Agnifilo told a TMZ documentary that Combs plans to testify at his trial whenever it's scheduled. So this trial will be what the tape shows type of event. And that's
Now, I want to move on from here also. Now, I'm going to go to the last section of my presentation. Now, give me 1 second, people. Now, let me go to this. If I can get to it now. Now I'm going to go to The View. And this is how they worded it. And it's a shame that people can outright lie like this and try to spin and create a narrative that's false. Now look how The View worded. Janet Jackson falsely said Kamala Harris is not black. Falsely said it. That's how they worded it. That's why I can't stand the media. They're shameful and they're shameless.
Superstar Janet Jackson just did a wide-ranging interview with British newspaper The Guardian, but most of the focus is on when she was asked her thoughts on VP Kamala Harris possibly become the first black female president. She said, she answered by saying that she had heard that Harris's father was white, which we all know is false. And a staffer claims that he was fired for issuing an apology in her name and that her team certified he wasn't authorized to speak.
Exactly. He was not authorized to speak for her. A publicist is supposed to speak when they're told to, not take an initiative that I didn't give you on my behalf. She was standing on what she said. She said she heard. She didn't say she knows. She didn't speak emphatically. She said she heard. And this picture that they showed doesn't look like it's old enough to be from 1964, because she was born in 64 and she's in that man's arm that's supposed to be carrying her there. Unless they got that picture remastered digitally, that picture don't look old enough to be from 1964. Because I was born after 64 and I got pictures that look way older than that.
On her behalf. Now, Jackson has not responded to requests for comment, but no matter how you feel about celebs speaking out politically, you know, is it okay for somebody to say, I don't know, I made a mistake?
Well, she hasn't said that she made a mistake. We don't know what she said because it's been one thing and another. Look, I think Janet Jackson, like every other American, whether you're a celebrity or not, has a right to endorse, support, or not support whomever they want.
Exactly.
So she's got every right to not like Kamala Harris if she doesn't want to.
But that's not what she said.
What she doesn't know, what she did was spread misinformation. And I think it's very irresponsible when you have a platform.
She didn't spread it. If she said, I heard, that's not spreading the information. Coming out and saying her father is white, that's spreading misinformation. See, they're not even focusing on what actually was said. She said, I heard. This is what she heard. Just like them sitting at this table on The View, all they can speak about is what they heard, and they don't even know emphatically what happened. How could you say she said she heard and then say at the same time that she's spreading misinformation?
The way Janet Jackson does, to use that platform carelessly to spread misinformation based on a racist allegation by Donald Trump. right? It was Donald Trump who tried to say Kamala Harris just
No.
turned black. So let's just go.
No, I don't rock with Donald Trump. No way whatsoever in any stretch of imagination. But Donald Trump is not the origin of us saying she's not one of us. Donald Trump didn't start that. Now, this is some more Democratic political bullshit, and Donald Trump did not start that statement. We didn't believe Kamala Harris was one of us when she ran the first time. She wiggled her way in to become a nominee because she was vice president when Biden stepped down. She wiggled her way in. We didn't believe her the first time. And now everybody's just jumping on the bandwagon saying she's one of us when she's not one of us, because when she was inaugurated as the first Indian vice president, not one of us.
Go through the 101. Kamala Harris is the daughter of two immigrants. Her mother is South Asian from India. Her father is Black from Jamaica. Here is a picture for all of you who need, or for Miss Jackson.
Now, this right here is propaganda. This picture is propaganda. It's going to come out. I don't know why they continuously lie. It's going to come out. And this picture looks too modern. It looks too modern for it to be Kamala Harris, months old. I don't buy it.
If you're nasty, here's the damn picture.
I feel like a picture of Kamala also would have done, Kamala Harris would have done the trick. I thought of it less from the perspective of Janet Jackson, who's an icon and I refuse to say anything bad about. Listen, we forget that we live in information silos. This is so different than how the media was even 10 years ago, where people largely got their news and their information from legacy media, where there was a level of objectivity and a fact checking involved. So if you perhaps get, and I'm just saying this for an example, get all your news on Facebook and you lean right of center, that algorithm is monetized and going to tee up information that reinforces your own beliefs. If you're a Trump supporter online, you very likely won't encounter ever some of the worst things that he has said. The same does go for the left. I don't even know the partisan breakdown of what happened here, but my guess is she's not looking at great sources of media. And I say all this because it's why I try to not have judgment with Trump voters. Instead, I try to engage them, because
This is the problem I have with politics altogether. I have a problem with politics, and I don't, and I would never be a part of, participate in American politics. Never in my life, because so much dirt is sling back and forth. And if somebody disagree, this is the result of somebody merely disagreeing with somebody. And they know that Kamala Harris was not claiming that she was one of us prior to her saying that she's going to run for president. Again, when she was inaugurated as the first Indian American, not female Black American. She was not inaugurated for that. And she was not saying she was that. So if we are not receptive to her because she didn't prove herself trustworthy on us, that gig is up. I don't care who you put before us to repeatedly say she's one of us, she one of us, she one of us. And these entertainers, contrary to popular opinion, they do not influence us. And it's insulting for them to think that they could.
I find people who are highly educated, highly successful that support him, but they often don't know of some of the biggest scandals or the worst things that he's said about people or things that he's done.
Again, it's really insulting for them to think that they could influence us. Any entertainer, when they are bought and paid for, and they are sock puppets and string puppets, but they think they can influence us and tell us what we should be doing when they know they got to where they're at by doing dirty deals, by selling out, by being clowns and buffoons.
And I think if you take the judgment out and just kind of get back to facts and trying to persuade people, it helps.
Well, this is the sorry, Sunny. This is the number one most severe warning in the short term we have globally. Misinformation and disinformation. The World Economic Forum said this is our.
What about missed information? The information that you all cover up that the people miss, and you get mad when somebody bring that missed information out.
Greatest risk in the next few years, and it's not just this country. It's everywhere. And a few reasons you mentioned that, you've got the algorithm, but you also have internal people like, Donald Trump, who ironically created or coined the term fake news, willingly and on the daily, it seems, perpetuating false stories on purpose.
Donald Trump did not coin the term fake news. I heard the term, fake news way before Donald Trump even decided to say fake news. See, that's misinformation and misinformation. And it's like their doctrine of discovery. The first time they hear something, basically to them, it's the first time it happened.
But then you also have foreign adversaries. We recently learned of Russia paying millions of dollars to content creators to keep them doing this. So the big message here is going back to like journalism 101 or just education 101, which is you never single source a story. When you're looking anywhere in journalism, we're always taught you have to back it up. In media, for as much flack as media gets for being leaning, we can get fired or in trouble for not being able to source where we got our story. But the other part.
And you can get fired for merely going against the code by telling the truth. You can get fired for doing that. Now, I don't rock with Candace Owens, but she got fired for telling the truth.
Part of this story that bothers me is the whole identity issue. The fastest growing group in this country is multiracial individuals, not multiracial individuals. So asking people, what are you? My biracial friends always struggled with they weren't white enough or they weren't black enough, and they were always left in the middle. The middle is where the world is headed. And so we need to be more open about.
This is not a new thing. Mulatto is not a new thing. Multiracial is not a new thing. Biracial is not a new thing. Don't let me tell you what the origin of mulatto, biracial, and multiracial is. The origin of that is rape. So stop it.
People's identities and what they identify as, and have some grace.
Well, I do think you get to identify yourself, and being one of the multiracial people here at the table. I will say this. I would handle this the way Kamala Harris has, and that is to give it no air. I think Kamala is breaking barriers.
Kamala Harris is not answering that because she know once she open her mouth, it's going to open up a whole barrel of things. She can't, because I say it like this, you have to talk to lie. To keep from lying, she's staying quiet. That's what she's doing. She's being quiet about it so she won't be referred to as a liar. But she already lied. The first time she came out and said she was one of us, and she's not. I don't care what Ricky Smiley say. I don't care what Dale Hughley goofy ass say, or Steve Harvey's illiterate ass say. She's not one of us. Or Roland Martin short Porky Pig looking ass. I don't care what neither one of them say. She's not one of us, and you can't force her on us. None of you. All of you put together can't force her on us.
Barriers just by being in the room. Regardless of whether Janet Jackson thinks she's black or white or Indian, the very fact that she is in the room.
Janet did not say what she was. Janet say she heard that her father was white. She said she heard. She did not refer to anything. She said she heard.
Room deconstructs, in my view, the alleged societal norms that we've seen in the nearly 250 years of this country of what a presidential candidate looks like. And so I think that is what matters most. And I also think that when you are biracial or multiracial, you do get to
see a lot of our sisters and women in particular, but I'm going to speak on the sisters. They want to see a woman elected as president, and Kamala Harris is doing the Sister Act, you know, back in habit, because she tried the shit when Biden ran. She became the vice president, but she's back in habit now doing the Sister Act too. Just say that she was one of us. If she don't share our sentiment, she don't have our best interests at heart, she's a black woman, but she's the wrong black woman. So any black woman shouldn't do sisters. It should be the right one who share your sentiment as a black woman and is going to serve our people and not serve to our detriment. When she get that office and she tell those who supported her where to go, I'm going to clown all of them.
To identify yourself in any way in which you choose to identify yourself. Now, she has identified herself as a black woman. She has also said that her mother is Asian. She didn't just become black. And so it's unfortunate that Janet Jackson, an icon, admittedly said, I don't know, I haven't been reading the news these past few days. So I don't know if
exactly. You're compounding her statement. I don't know it, but she said, I heard. So why would you hold that against her?
it comes from misinformation. I don't know if it comes from a lack of information, but all I know is that I don't want to give it this much air.
Well, unfortunately, no, well, hold on. Yeah, she's got a phone. Janet Jackson is not a political animal.
Yeah.
She does, she's a musician. Her life is doing this, and she's mourning her brother. So
that's right.
And it's distasteful for people to be coming at her while she's mourning her brother. She said she heard. So she should not be held accountable for what she heard. She didn't even attempt to solidify it. The only thing she did is stood on what she said and what she's entitled to.
I am, you know, I sometimes have said stuff and, you know, I was wrong. But people want you to say something right away, you know, but when people are coming at you saying, hey, you're not paying, you're dumb, you don't know, you know, you don't want to answer people, especially if
and you're afraid you'll get it wrong in answer.
And it is a pain in the butt, I have to tell you. So sometimes, sometimes people get it wrong and they're wrong. They made a mistake, they were wrong. It happens. Anybody who says it doesn't happen to every one of us, multiracial or not, we all do it. So, okay, a little grace for the girl. A little grace for the girl, okay?
Exactly. Now, I want to move on. I think I want to, let me see where we're at. I'm going to skip the Candace Owens. I'm going to go straight to the buffoonish ass Negro, D.L. Hughley, and this would be the conclusion of this string. How is Janet Jackson peddling far-right lies? See, this what makes me mad when people go outside of their realm of their profession. D.L. Hughley is a comedian who sits on his platform and do what I always say about people on these platforms. He intellectually masturbate, and he loves to make people the butt of his jokes. See, what he does is what caused Chris Rock to get slapped in his damn face, thinking you can just point out somebody and make them the butt of your jokes, cracking on somebody's wife with their husband sitting right there. I'm not saying that Will Smith shouldn't have slapped him in his face. I'm saying he should have went backstage when he went up backstage and slapped the shit out of him. But you don't make a man's wife the butt of your jokes. You don't do that. And D.L. Hughley love speaking out of turn about people that's not even coming for him or never came for him. But he'll go and he'll run his mouth about somebody. He's going to get enough of that. You said she sounded like the interview. He said the interview that Janet Jackson did sounded like a Trump rally. He said, for your information, it's a little ironic to question whether someone is black while you're breathing through the nose of a white woman. So how corny is that? Janet Jackson got a nose job. So who's to say that the shape of her nose and the size of her nose is synonymous to what a white woman nose is? The nose is small. I barely see white women with small noses. Their noses are usually come out way further than Janet's nose. I'm going to tell you that right now. What was crazy about that he acted like a total woman, D.L. Hughley. He didn't just make one statement. He kept making statements. He just kept making statements, acting like a teenage girl. He acted like a teenage girl tweeting that much about another female. That is not masculine. That is outright. I don't know what's in. You're going to talk about you don't know what was in that iron. What's in those cigars you smoke? There must be estrogen in those cigars that you smoke. And then he says, Kamala Harris looks the way she does because her mom is Indian and her dad is from Jamaica. Janet Jackson looks the way she looks because she has a plastic surgeon. So what? I don't, condone surgery, but regardless of what Janet did 30 plus years ago, she had that nose for 30 plus years. She didn't paint the nose white. It's the same color she's always been. So, he argued that the singer should not be judging Harris' race, taking shade at white Jackson family. The children that either married into the family or the children of Michael's. That he, to me, my honest sentiment is he purchased. Then he made another tweet. All I know is Kamala Harris looks like she did when she was in Oakland, but Janet don't look like she did when she was Penny. What the hell was in that iron? What the hell is in your cigars trolling a female this much, sending that many tweets about a female that is so effeminate, is very effeminate. Now, Janet Jackson was Penny 40 plus years ago. 40 plus years ago, she was Penny. She was like 10 years old when she played Penny. Like 10. That was damn near 50 years ago. So he sounds stupid. It says Janet's controversial comments about Harris happened during an interview with The Guardian. She speculated that Vice President's heritage, making misformed remark that Kamala Harris' father is white. It's not a misformed remark. She said what she heard. She said what she heard. And that is not manly, not even for a comedian to send that many tweets about a female as a man. And what's crazy about it, you're doing it on behalf of a politician. So you're telling me somebody you don't even know, you got to know her, but you didn't even know her prior to that. You will disrespect a sister on behalf of a politician, one who didn't even come for you. At the time she's mourning her brother. Very distasteful. Janet need to call Monique. That's what Janet need to do. Call Monique and have Monique deal with you because she had your ass crying. She had you on the ropes. She need to call Monique. That's what Janet need to do. She should just call Monique and have Monique deal with your punk ass. I'm going to end right there. I'm not going to even continue. I'm not going to even continue with this. I'm going to end it right there. And I want to thank my brother, Bronze Flat Power God, Big Dog Philly OG, my brother Greedy Vegan, Talk Your Talk Media, P. Moses, my brother Warfare K, my brother Anthony Lowe, my sister True Daughter of Darkness, my brother Relentless. Thanks for tapping in. I appreciate you all for tapping in. Join me on Sunday where I'll be doing the hypocrisy of the war on drugs. Until next time, this is The Enemy's Public. Like, share, subscribe. Leave a comment in the comment section. Peace.